Hello mate, and welcome to another exciting video. In this video I want to talk to you about algorithms. Now, most people when they hear the word algorithm they automatically think of some string theory length mathematical formula that's controlled by AI that solves all the problems in the world. And what I want to do is demystify that for you a little bit. So over the course of this video we're going to talk about algorithms, what they are, how you can write your own, and do so in a smart way. Before I get started, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone for subscribing and hitting the notification icon. That really helps me out. And of course, an even bigger thank you to my members and patrons. You're all legends and I love you dearly. Cool, so let's get on with this then. So an algorithm is actually very, very simple. What an algorithm is a series of instructions, and that can be anything from a simple command in Python like reading user input to something much more complex. And you can write an algorithm for every single task you can possibly think of. So in this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about making a cup of coffee using instant granules, because I don't want to get into a whole pissing contest about what the right way to make a cup of coffee is. So the simple instructions would be boil the kettle, put the coffee into the mug, add the hot water, coffee created, that's done. Now, of course, you can split that up into even more complex instructions. You could include the having to go to the store and buy the coffee granules, and then you can also include into that the instructions of travel to the store, search for coffee granules, pick up coffee granules, take them to the checkout, pay the cashier, bring coffee granules home. So again, another series of instructions which can be included within the go to the store and get the coffee granules set. Then you can have boil the kettle broken down into unplug kettle, open kettle's top, fill with water, close the lid, place the kettle back on its power pedestal or plug it in or whatever it is, what kind of kettle you're using, turn it on, wait until the water's boiling and the kettle turns itself off. Then that's the boiling the kettle bit broken down. So you can see that a really simple mundane task can be broken down into lots and lots of steps. Now, this is where becoming a talented programmer comes in, because a talented programmer will be able to think of these algorithms on the fly. They'll be able to create the list of instructions that they're going to follow, and then they'll be able to write the series of instructions in code for whatever task it is in as efficient way as possible. Now, that last point is very important. What you find when you search through YouTube, for example, channels like, for example, Code Monkey and people like that, is what they will do is they will teach you a method of doing something, but very rarely is it the most efficient way of doing it. Now, there are numerous reasons for that. Some of the people teaching programming may not necessarily be particularly proficient at it, and there are those that are deliberately making you do it the most convoluted way possible, by means of trying to persuade you to buying their own pre-made code bits that they've done. And you'll notice that their tutorials tend to be peppered with references to their website and their store page and all that sort of thing. So now that's not necessarily to say that these people are bad people and what they're doing is evil and they should be stopped and all that sort of thing, but the point is that you need to learn how to program and develop your algorithms naturally yourself, and then think of the most efficient way of doing it. For example, going to boil the kettle, you may need to include the instructions on how to actually pick up the kettle and fill it with water, but there are different ways of doing that, and the most efficient way may be a little bit more complicated, might take a little bit more time to think of, but once you actually do it, you find actually that was really simple. It's like modular programming. A lot of people struggle with modular programming because they see things in a very different way. So not everybody can be a good programmer, not everybody can be a talented programmer. You have to sort of see the world in a very specific way, or teach yourself to see it in that way in order to be able to think quickly on the fly when you're writing code. But the point is that algorithms are not mystical, there's no magic involved. It's just a set of instructions, and how you interpret that set of instructions may be different for every single person. If you look back in the early 90s when things like Microsoft Office were being developed, the amount of junk code that was included in Microsoft Office because people in Microsoft thought it would be funny to have Bill Gates pop up and say hello or something like that when you're in the middle of doing something, was, at the time it was considered quirky and funny, but nowadays you would consider that to be just really irritating. You don't want your software behaving in unexpected ways. You want to be able to buy the software to do what you want it to do, have extra functionality by all means, stuff that may be a bit above your skill level that you might learn to use later on. But if your software starts behaving in unexpected ways, these days that would be considered to be a security risk and would probably consider to be a virus, and you'd end up having to buy new bits of software to replace the ones that had been erased and so on. So these days we don't want to put loads of nif-naf and trivia into our code. We want it to be as streamlined and efficient as possible. And the point of modular programming is that if you're going to repeat the same step over and over again, you don't want to have to keep writing that instruction over and over again. You want to create that algorithm that does that set of instructions and then just call on that chunk of code every time you want to perform that specific action. So, for example, if you want to display a pop-up on your screen, you could write the pop-up code every single time you want to display it, but it's much easier to just create a chunk of code that you referenced and call that chunk of code, for example, show pop-up, and then just tell the pop-up what specific information you want to be contained within it, so you haven't got to draw the box on the screen and the button and so on every single time. So when you're writing algorithms, you have to think about usability and reusability and modularity as much as how simple you want to make the task. So thanks very much for watching that, guys. It was kind of short and sweet, I understand, but the point of this video was to kind of demystify algorithms and explain what they are, and more importantly, how you can do it yourself. Now, when you're writing your own algorithms, here's what I'd say. Start off with the big picture. So what do you actually want to do? What do you want the user to be able to do with your program? So are they going to be typing in information and then retrieving that information later on? Are they going to be moving sprites around the screen? Whatever you want it to do, start off with that really big picture view and then break it down into smaller chunks, and keep breaking it down into smaller chunks until you get to the point where you're at a set of specific instructions that you can easily interpret into code. So for example, if it's coming to user input, the user input step, you need to actually prompt the user for input. You need to open up the prompt that allows them to type, and then you have to wait for them to hit the carriage return, and then take whatever information that is been entered before they hit the carriage return and store that information in a variable, and then send it to another algorithm or another part of your algorithm for sorting, storing, whatever it is that you're going to do. So that's generally how I would go about writing an algorithm. It's not rocket surgery, it's fairly simple stuff, but it needs to be kind of simplified as much as humanly possible. So thanks very much for watching, guys. See you in the next one, but until then, you take damn good care of yourselves. All right, bye bye.